Hi, I don't have long. I've got to get all these files transferred. In fact, when it comes to the internet, file transfer is a big job and it's something we do all the time. Now, today a lot of times what we'll do is we'll open up a web page and we can actually download files, and that's great. But what I want to talk about is something called File Transfer Protocol, or FTP. FTP's been around for a long, long time. It predates the World Wide Web, and it is still the real common way that we use to transfer files, in particular very, very large files. So to watch FTP work, let's fire up a client and a server. Okay, so here we are back at the lab, and once again, I've got a FTP server and I've got an FTP client. Now, FTP is a little bit weird, in particular because things like web servers and email clients and things like that often come with operating systems. FTP is not quite as common as being a built-in application. For example, it would be tricky for you to find an FTP server built into Windows. So we usually go to third-party tools to make all this happen. So let's go ahead and start by looking at the server itself. So what we need to do here is set this guy up so that he can begin receiving requests from clients. So the first thing we're going to do is set up some accounts. And so I've got an account called Dave. Now, and he's got a password built into him. Now the trick to FTP is that when someone connects, they're going to have to be in a directory, some folder on your computer. And we call that the home directory. So with FileZilla, what we do is we set a particular directory, and in this case it's actually my desktop. It's a little bit hard to read, but it's the desktop on this computer. And I can actually set what permissions I want this particular person who logs in to have. So in this case, all they can do is read and list, and they can look at the subdirectories. So if I wanted people to be able to upload, I would have to add write. If I wanted people to make directories in here, which is usually a good idea, if you're having people upload, you tend to want them to put it in their own directories. I can have them create directories as well. So now when Dave logs in, he'll be able to do whatever he needs to do. The other thing you need to appreciate is that FTP is a great place for doing really basic like file downloads and stuff. Now, in order to do that, we have to create a very, very famous account. And that account is called Anonymous. A-N-O-N-Y-M-O-U-S. Now, FTP servers have different ways to do this. Some FTP servers say just allow anonymous. They have different ways. In this particular one, I have to actually create an account called Anonymous. And I'm not even going to give it a password or anything. And now what I need to do is say, if someone logs in anonymously, where do I want them to go? So I'm going to say they can come to my desktop, and I'll hit OK. And now they can come into my desktop, and all they can do is read, list, and look at subdirectories. This is a very common thing we do. If you want to download a bunch of files and that type of thing, this is how you would set up an anonymous account. And remember, Anonymous doesn't have a password. So we're going to hit OK, and what we're looking at now is my FTP server ready to take some response. Now, just because your FTP server is ready to go, now we're going to need some FTP clients. There's zillions of FTP clients. In fact, even Windows has built-in FTP clients. There's a command prompt, which we'll see in a moment, and even Internet Explorer can act as an FTP client. But what we want to do is use a more robust client. So I'm going to use the popular WSFTP-LE, which is a free FTP client, and it works absolutely great. Now keep in mind with FTP, we've got a server set up, but in order to use FTP, FTP clients send out requests on port 21, but FTP servers will respond back on port 20. So if you remember from earlier episodes, this is a great example of where we would need to go into our router and set up port triggering on port 20. Okay. So I think everything's set up. Let's go ahead and fire up the client and see if we can log in to my FTP server. Now, I've started up a very popular FTP client. This is Ipswich WSFTP. This is the LE, or the free version. They have a pro version as well. And this is a pretty standard screen that you're going to see here. Usually you're going to have your computer on one side and then another directory tree of the remote computer on the other side. So the first thing we're going to have to do is connect. So let me just make a quick connection here. And I'm going to use the user ID of Dave and a password of total. Oops, did I say that out loud? Whoa, okay. So this is a good connection. The moment that connection shows up, and any good FTP client's going to do this, is they're going to bring you into what's known as the home directory on the server. So this Dave account actually has access to the desktop over on the server. So I can come in here, and whatever I have access to, I can do all kinds of fun stuff. For example, if I want to transfer this file, now it's going to transfer to wherever I am right here. So it's going to transfer right now to the root directory of my C drive, which I'm not a big fan of that. Let's just go into a games folder. That'll work. Whatever. World of Tanks, great game. And I'm going to make a new folder. And I'm going to call it Dave, because it's Dave stuff. And because I've made this folder over here, anything I copy from here is going to go into that folder. So let me pick something nice and small. And all these FTP clients tend to be noisy. I don't know why they all do that, but they do. But anyway, I've just transferred a file. That's pretty much all that we need to do to make that happen. Clients like this are absolutely fantastic, but you've got some other options. For example, pretty much any web browser makes a pretty good FTP client too. Now, because a web browser thinks he's a web browser first and foremost, you always have to type in FTP so it knows that you don't want it to be a web browser, you want it to be an FTP client. So I'm going to go ahead and do FTP://, then I type in the IP address of the FTP server, and ta-da! So now what you're looking at is your web browser has basically just gear shifted himself into being an FTP client. So he's not quite as good as a full-blown FTP client. For example, uploading and things like that are kind of painful, but it's a really good way for quick and dirty downloads. And that's why we see if this works, it usually does. So for example, here's the famous Microsoft.com FTP site, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different things that you can download in here. It's not the easiest thing to read, but it absolutely works this way. So web browsers is a good way to do it as well. Now, there's a third way to do it, and this is on the Network Plus, so I want to make a quick mention of it. And that is Windows, and pretty much all operating systems come with a built-in FTP client, but it's a command prompt. So you type in FTP, and then usually the name of the server you want to connect to, or you can just hit FTP. And then we could do things like, for example, open. And now it wants me to log in. So I'm now logged in. If you're not sure which commands to type, you can just type help. We're going to type dir, and it's going to show me the connection. So I can do things, at this point, I can use commands like get, or I can put commands like put to send files back and forth. So there's a lot of different ways to make FTP work from the client side. However, from the server side, you're going to need an FTP server. All right. Now, the other thing I want to show you right now is we're going to go back in, and this time I'm going to watch the capture that goes on from my FTP client here over to my FTP server. So let's get Wireshark going, and let's watch an FTP capture actually take place. All right, now what I did this time is I went over to my client, I connected over to the server here on this computer, so I logged in, and I grabbed one file, and then that's pretty much it. So let's take a look and watch this process. So I need to sort this. Let me filter out I just want to look at FTP information. Okay, so first of all, here we can actually see the connection beginning to take place. So what we're doing is we're seeing the connection from 104, which is my computer, to 102. So for some reason I missed the actual hello, are you here? So I'm missing one packet. But anyway, here come the packets as the server responds back to the client saying, here's who I am, blah, blah, blah. And now it's prompting for a login. So I can see the user logged in anonymously. And here's the password. I want to take a look at, when you log in anonymously, it's considered good manners to use an email address as a password. So the user it's not required, but it's just good manners. So the user's client throws in this WSFTP90 just, because they're trying to advertise their client is really all it boils down to. So there's the response back, and it sets its directory, and it's ready to do whatever needs to be done. So the first thing is we sent a list command so we could see what this server has to offer, and it changed directories. and it transferred some kind of, there it is, it transferred a file called World of Tanks. So let me show you what happens here if we follow this TCP stream. The important thing I want you to appreciate more than anything else here is that FTP by definition is totally in the clear. So usernames and passwords are absolutely wide open and anybody can read them. So the important thing I want you to appreciate here is that FTP has no security whatsoever. We could see the username, passwords, everything. So that's what we call a bad thing. If you want to do secure stuff, you would have to use secure protocols like SFTP, Secure FTP, which uses encryptions like SSL and TLS to actually encrypt the FTP stream itself. Now, there is one other type of FTP I want to make a quick mention of. It's not FTP, but it kind of looks like it, and it's called Trivial FTP or TFTP. TFTP doesn't have nearly the robustness that FTP does, and it's a UDP protocol, and it runs on port 69. So I would need a TFTP server and a TFTP client to show it to you, but really, except for a few things, it's pretty much identical, except it's a lot more lightweight. All right, so that's FTP. Remember, FTP runs on port 21, although servers will respond back on port 20. And remember that you can make user accounts and such, but good old anonymous account is the common public way we use when we're playing with FTP.